Morning, everybody. Right, gonna wait a few minutes for people to keep joining, but in the meantime, uh, just in the chat, write a quick intro, your name, where you work, how you're feeling. Just reading through some of the chat, definitely agree with Lauren. Almost over, semester getting close, but finals. All right, got a few more people still joining. All right, I think this might be good. And thank you for everybody who made it. And thank you to College Rising Core folks who are joining us today to have this sort of reintroduction or new introduction to Success Boston and our coaches and advisors and network. Today we have a pretty brief agenda, a more brief agenda than usual, I think. Gonna probably only go till 11:15 tops. I don't want to keep everyone, especially like as folks were mentioning, semester's almost over. Students are probably stressed out with finals coming up and apps that are due for college. So won't take up too much of your time, but definitely have time at the end if people want to stay on and have any discussions. So just want to check in on people, see how everything is going. I know folks are putting in the chat how they're feeling, but uh, always good to check in with people, see how everything is, what's going on, how people doing, how are you feeling? Busy, busy. All right. Okay. Well, we'll just go into some updates real quick then. Got a couple trainings next year in the spring semester from U Aspire. They're going to be providing 2 more trainings for us. So second week of January on the 13th, we have their financial aid offer review training. And then in May, they have their summer transition and college success review. If you want to register for those, the links are in the agenda that I sent out, but it'll be in the notes as well. Anybody is welcome. And if you register but are not able to make it, they do send out the recording link afterwards that you can access for, I believe, 30 days. So even if you can't make it to that specific training at that time, make sure to register just so you can access it afterwards at your own leisure. Some updates, and I know I've been talking to a few coaches and advisors and organizations about resources that students will be needing access to, and wanted to put it out to the network to see if people have any could point to any places that are supporting students with this or families. So a few things. Evictions. The moratorium is being lifted pretty soon, or it has, if it hasn't already been. I don't know if anyone here has been working with students or families that have been going through that, and if they have any resources that they can point us to.
Yes, we have. I'm going to find it and put it in the chat.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, that's just one of the things that's happening right now. I think as the calendar year is ending, a lot of these moratoriums are going to be lifted soon, as well as the student loan payment moratorium being lifted at the end of the calendar year. I think in January they're due to be restarted again. So making sure to let your students know who've graduated and are back on that track to pay student loans, that those will be restarting in January unless something happens. I think they're on track to start. So be aware of that. Make sure students and alumni are ready for that. And then one of the other questions that we've been getting is, I think a lot of you know about like VITA, free tax preparation, and those of you who had been coaching and working with students at Bunker Hill or some other institutions that had those free tax preparation services on campus, those are not available anymore, but a lot of families and students rely on those free services. Do any people know of any other alternate resources that provide that free preparation for taxes?
This is Karen. I know of one online that will be reopening in January. I can find it and send it in the chat.
Thank you, Karen. Oh, and thank you, Emily, for that rental relief fund application. And Morgan, ABCD. Yep, they're always great. This is why I love this network, because if I don't know something, I know someone here doesn't know it. So appreciate it. All right, awesome. And this is also a space for people to ask questions if they've been having any issues with students or trying to figure out some information that they haven't been able to access. Open time for people to ask questions before I head to the next section. All right. Well, coming up, so the monthly messages resource hub that we've been working on for a while will be going live, the new update at least, hopefully in January by our next coaches meeting. Thank you to all of you who, Liz Walzak, our consultant and previous Success Boston lead back in the day. Those of you who spoke to her, contributed to this refresh of the page. Really excited about it. It'll be more accessible and usable for students and coaches and everybody who wants to support folks as they head to college. So really, really excited and can't wait to show you all later. Well, I guess next year for the, I guess, the final draft of it before we really launch it. So you can give some feedback in case we need to update anything else. But yeah, really, really pumped for that. A couple things that we've been getting from some of our partners at the higher ed institutions. Pretty straightforward, but never hurts to reiterate, making sure that students are registered and have financial aid ready for the spring. Reminding students about withdrawal deadlines, especially as this semester, most institutions have pushed their withdrawals till pretty much the end of the semester, but also about the financial and academic consequences for withdrawing. So ensuring the students are aware that, yeah, withdrawals, if they withdraw from classes, is going to be have a pretty big impact on them. Help making sure students are prepared for finals, pointing them towards online tutoring services not on campus, but at their college to see if those are available. And then from our specific campuses, Bunker Hill wants students to check in with their BHCC advisor before the end of the semester. And they've also launched a basic needs page that I'll make sure to link in the notes. But this includes, it's one of their web pages for any student who needs support from food to childcare to homelessness or transportation. So it's a lot of resources that they've partnered with outside agencies that might be able to help out their students. So definitely take a look at that if your students are in need of support. Ben Franklin, Institute of Technology, also registration's open right now for spring, and there's spring semester is going to be a little different than usual. They've eliminated spring break and made it a little different with 7-week and 14-week courses. So make sure if you have students over at BFIT that they should be aware of the different academic calendar for next semester. Over at Roxbury Community College, just prep finals and early registration is live for spring. So if students need assistance, make sure to reach out to Kenley over there. And then UMass Boston, I think most people, it's as everybody is saying, winter and spring registration is open. Winter courses are going to be pretty short and pretty quick, but they're going to be at a reduced price. So if you have students who want to get ahead, those are an opportunity for that. I don't know if I missed anything from those institutions that people want to shout out or anything. Or if there's any other colleges that are here that want to update anything. I know Jade, I see you for BU. Welcome.
Hi, yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Jade at Boston University. We're in the thicket of everything. I feel like we're doing all the things here. I'm at financial assistance for those of you who do not know, and former success coach. If any of you in your programs have students who've applied early decision to Boston University, I am actively reviewing and packaging students for their financial aid awards. So if you have any questions on any students or you want to know where, well, I can't tell you their admission decision, obviously, but I can let you know if their financial aid application is complete. if we're missing anything. So if you have any prospects, whether they're ED priority right now, just because we're putting those together and trying to have those decisions out in the next 2 weeks or so. But also for regular decision applicants, shoot me an email. I will put here in the chat, Franco J at BU, and we can find a time to talk about students in your pipeline cohorts. Also, if you have any current students at Boston University and you have questions or concerns around leave of absence or withdrawals, things of that nature, and how that works with financial aid, I can also either speak with you directly, or I can coordinate a conversation with the assigned assistant director to your student's financial aid file. So feel free to reach out to me. I know some of you have already, and I owe you some responses. So, but please reach out. This is the time that we are trying to make things done. Whether they're current students and the semester's ending in about a week or so, or if they're prospective applicants.
Thank you. All right. I think if there's nothing else, we'll just jump into the next part of the agenda, which is going to be just a roundtable discussion for everybody here about trends that you all are seeing with your students, with a few different themes. And yeah, anyone who just feel free to, I guess I can call on a few folks if we are a little quiet, but trying to figure out what you're seeing with student engagement and college apps versus this. But first off, we'll just start off with engagement and connecting with students. How has that been? I know I've been talking with a lot of folks with like what's the right balance of outreach, what's the right balance of trying to connect with students, especially when there's a lot of Zooming and stuck at home, or students are working as well. But what are people saying?
I can go ahead and start us off. Hi, everyone. My name is Valerie, and I'm with College Advising Corps. So I, work with students, particularly on the college advising process, and engagement generally has definitely been low this fall. I think a lot of us are experiencing that. I really resonate with what you were saying, Juan, about finding that right balance, right, of outreach. It's a discussion that I've been having with my team throughout the past few months. And so I think really the main issue for us is like, we want to get all this great information out, all the resources out. And the only way we can do that now is through mass emails or like Google Classroom, something like that. We're finding that students are not, reading the emails, reading Google Classroom posts and whatnot, which I think is to be expected because it's really just information overload, right? And so I definitely don't have the answer to the issue, but I think something that I have found to be helpful is just like the personalized and individualized emails or texts. I've started to stray away from the mass emails and the Google Classroom posts unless it's something that's absolutely necessary. But just trying to get that one-on-one time as much as possible has been really significant for me this fall. I'm not sure if others are feeling similarly or have any solutions. Tips would be great.
So I have no tips, but I just want to agree with you, Valerie. Like we've also been having a really hard time with student engagement. We sent out, like you said, we send out a lot of emails and, students don't really read them and they don't respond. And then sometimes I get a response like, can you remove me from your e-list? I'm like, damn it. So it's just been really challenging. Specifically, I feel like now it's been really, really hard. But I do agree with the sending specific text messages to just individual students instead of doing the mass text and the mass emails. Even though it takes more time, I think they really do appreciate that. And I think that they could tell that, okay, she sent out the emails and now she's reaching out to me specifically like, all right, I think it's time I respond. So I think they are seeing the emails, they're just not responding.
I also have no answers, but I'd like to echo what Val and Annabelle were talking about. And another sort of related problem that I'm having with my students is around like deadlines and sort of just general task organization and executive functioning. My students have all expressed that it's really difficult for them to organize their time effectively and like pay attention and focus in the remote environment, which I totally understand. I just graduated college, I know class of 2020 did this whole remote thing too. So I get where they're coming from. But I'm also trying to walk the line of like explaining to them that like this is more like what college is going to be like, right? Like in college, no one, your college advisor is not chasing you down to submit anything, and your teachers aren't contacting you for missing assignments. So I'm trying to find a balance of like explaining that to them without like scaring them off from attending college. So if anyone has any tips for that also, especially from the, people that currently work with college students, I'd greatly appreciate it.
In terms of the email thing, Portia had a really good idea a few months back, and that was to like raffle a really small gift card to people who replied to certain questions in our email. And that generated some buzz and just a little bit of like, it was a little bit more that we could talk about when we were talking with our students, like, you missed out on, the gift card to Dunkin' Donuts, like, what were you doing? So I think we are like increasing our open rates, and not everyone reads everything, but it's been a helpful strategy in terms of like just getting those opens and then trying to be strategic with like how we structure newsletters. And Chris has been doing a really good job of trying to make them engaging and fun, and throwing a meme or throwing a picture, and having it not all be about the business.
Yeah, and regarding that comment about not scaring students from college, especially with you won't have someone telling you, hey, you have to turn in your paper, or if you miss class, your grades are going to go down. At least as much as in high school. I think some coaches, and I know in the past I've also tried to tell students that if they really value independence, that this is going to be a time that they're going to be extremely independent. They still will have some resources and support systems to fall back on, but this is where they'll be able to like sort of stretch their wings a little bit and do more of what they want to do instead of being told exactly what to do. So that's one way that I've been trying. I tried to sort of spin it positively, but I know that can also backfire sometimes.
I think to add on to that, there's this like term called a warm demander. And it's like you're still holding them to that expectation, that high expectation, like holding them accountable. But it's like your delivery is super strategic in the sense where it's like, hey, like, you got a warning, but like, let's meet to talk about it. I'm here to help you, blah, 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 blah. So like, that's just like a really general example, but it's like that perfect mix of like, this is what you need to be doing, but things are gonna be okay. And yeah, warm demander.
Can I actually ask a question to the Success Boston coaches? Obviously with College Advising Corps, we're working with our current high school students on the process of applying to college, but I'm just curious for the first year Success Boston students, so folks that were graduating from BPS in the spring in the midst of this, like how are they doing overall, and what kind of trends are you seeing? Like, are there more students that have withdrawn from classes? Do you feel like they're getting the like academic support that they need? Do you have students that are planning to come back for the spring semester? I guess I'm just curious overall how first year students are doing and like what kind of trends you're seeing.
I can start it off because we actually talked about this yesterday. So it's really interesting with this class. So we're seeing that the majority of the students, they are enrolled, and a very small amount of them specifically from Bunker Hill, which is like where our biggest caseload is, they're not like they're still in the class, but you know, the withdrawal deadline at Bunker Hill is like on December 22nd or something like that. So it's very close. So we're wondering if they're just waiting or like, what's the deal? I mean, they said that, you know, they're doing fine, but it's just so interesting because like in the springtime, we saw a lot of students withdraw from classes. And this time is just like maybe like 2 or 3. So we're like, okay, so are they just waiting or like, what's the deal? So it's just all very like up in the air right now. Not a lot of them have registered for the spring semester, which is concerning because we're already like, you know, December 2nd. So some of them are saying that, you know, they want to take some time off, the ones that have not registered, or, you know, they want to work more because due to their parents losing their jobs, or, you know, they have to bring extra income into the home. So we're afraid that we're going to see a big drop off for the spring.
I would add to that. I think what is in the best of circumstances, sometimes a really hard challenge of connecting to the appropriate resources to find success in higher ed for a first-year student. I think this year is like that much harder. So like, I think a trend I'm seeing is that in challenging classes like Calc 1 or whatever, you know, like those first classes that you have to take to get into whatever major or whatever, students are really struggling. Like those are the classes in my caseload that like students are really struggling with those classes, and normally they struggle, but we can connect, they figure it out. But I think this year it's just not, all those pieces aren't coming together as well. And so I think there's going to be a lot of sort of changed majors or retaking classes, things like that.
Some of my students I know are they just have Zoom fatigue. Like, and that's really been the challenging thing. Like, I definitely had a student just tell me like, I'm taking the semester off. After having a long conversation, it ultimately came down to the student kind of just telling me like, I kind of can't do Zoom classes anymore. It takes way more energy. And this isn't necessarily like a new incoming student. This is a older student. So it's a student that was their first year was last year. So they kind of had like the, you know, the in-person and the Zoom experience. And they're just like, Zoom classes are a lot more harder than in-person classes. And so like, I know particularly with this student, that was like the main thing. She's like, I think I might wait it out and, you know, maybe try again in the fall just to see. And another student was just like, I want to, you know, I think I'm going to, you know, withdraw. I don't think I'm going to do spring semester just to kind of see what happens. He has a plan. Like he definitely does plan on like working. He's like, this is just like a thing. He's like, I do plan on coming back. It's just like, I need a break myself. So I think that is like that, you know, along with everything else, the Zoom fatigue plays like a big role in it as well.
Many of my students who are in their first year are actually, you know, kind of similar to what Annabelle said. They're powering through, but I'm not sure if it's, you know, okay, I'm just gonna power through and finish, or I've noticed a lot of the professors are giving extensions, which is great, but I feel like my students are kind of like, oh, I'll just, you know, do that assignment later. So I feel like it's gonna come down to the end of the semester to kind of really see where they are. But on a hopeful note, some older students who were previously unenrolled and have gone back to school are really motivated. I think just because they're like, hey, I don't know if this is going to be another couple months of this or another year of this. I kind of, you know, can't wait. Maybe I lost my job or hours were reduced. So this is kind of my time. So, you know, on a lighter note or a more positive note, I have seen students who are like, you know, this is kind of the world we live in right now. I'm gonna power through it. So it's definitely been difficult, but I've seen some students that are really, really motivated.
I'd be
I think
curious.
you're, oh,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead,
I
Emily.
was just going to pose another question if that's okay. For the success coaches, like I am noticing a very like distinct split among students of all ages. There are some who are just like figuring it out and making it work, and then the others are like really struggling with mental health. It almost seems like that's just a major decider how people are doing with their mental health right now, and it just like splits into two like um and so that's like a huge trend I'm seeing. I'm curious if other people are seeing the same.
Yeah, I was actually going to say I've seen similar trends. You know, some of the students that we check in with are like, you know, I was in remote classes for the end of my high school. I kind of got used to it, and now I'm just doing a similar thing in college. So this would be the first year students. And then, you know, I think there are just some people who are kind of struggling on a baseline and not necessarily knowing how to reach out to us for help, but just sort of trying to, you know, tread water. So yeah, I have seen something similar, Emily.
I'm also interested with if the College Advising Corps, if you all have seen students' mental health be kind of just tougher this year than in the past. I don't think that would be that it would make sense to me. But I don't know if you all are seeing that uh, be I guess, a bigger barrier, especially with, you know, college apps um, and everything else.
I've definitely talked more with students about mental health challenges this year. I think the isolation can be challenging. I know staying on like a consistent sleep schedule has been really hard for a lot of my students. Like, you know, being on screens all the time, I think it's hard to separate like the workday from like relaxing from, you know, being asleep, and that can throw a lot of my kids off. And I think generally the pressure of you know, many students are, you know, supporting their families, like working jobs as well, and like that adds a lot of stress to the day when you're kind of hearing about all the dangers of COVID, and then, you know, going to work the next day. So it's definitely been a bigger factor this year than this semester than in previous semesters, I would say.
I work at two high schools for CAC, and one of them has really done a good job of doing like virtual spirit days and like a lot of social engagement. And I think because the students knew each other and see each other on Zoom, they've at least had like a little bit of that social side satisfied, even though it's still tough. Whereas my other school is Boston Adult Technical Academy, so we have new students like almost entirely. So they don't really know each other well, and I think that's been really hard because even though we do a lot of like attempts at community building, they don't like really know their peers. So I think it's harder to motivate for them than usual because they don't like really have that sense of community that they'd probably have if we were in person. So I think that's been really interesting to look at because of the different natures of the schools. And yeah, there's only so much you can do virtually. I'd love any tips people have, but I do feel for them just because I think they just feel like out of space and time doing these virtual classes when everyone's cameras are off.
I know some people try to do just like game sessions where it's not we're going to be talking about college apps today, and like for a whole hour it's just gonna be like just playing games. If something comes up, then you can ask questions, but just to try to get people to think about something else for a little bit. So that's been somewhat successful. And I definitely, a lot of people in the chat talking about Zoom fatigue and also verbally, but you know, like students waiting out until normal comes back, finding it harder to relate to people because of isolation. So I feel like this is not applicable just to the students, but to people on this on this Zoom right now. I feel like everyone here is probably also zoomed out, which is why for those folks who might not know, these usually are 2-hour in-person meetings, and I've been reducing them like every month pretty much to an hour and a half or like an hour 15. This one I think hour 15 tops, maybe just an hour, because uh, it's tough. You know, if you're not motivated, if your students are struggling, you're also feeling that secondary trauma where you almost feel like you're not doing well because your students aren't doing well. I've definitely felt that, and I want to make sure that that you all see me and people here as resources for support. If you need help, you can always reach out to us. You can reach out to me. At the very least, we could motivate you, keep you going, help with some self-care tips, that type of thing. But really showing that it's a big network. It's a lot of people who are doing this work to support students, young people, because it takes a village, right? Like that adage is it's extremely true. I feel corny saying it, but it takes a village to raise a child or get someone to college and get them through. So I really appreciate everybody who is doing the work. Teresa, yep, I feel guilty even though I've done everything I could. Yep, I 100% feel that, especially when students are struggling and you're like, what could I have done? Like, you can't take their classes, you can't take their exams, you can only do so much. So got to forgive yourself a little bit. All right, so one thing I'm gonna do, because I don't want to put people in breakout rooms unless they want to. So I'll ask folks to just verbally say yes if they're feeling like doing a 15-minute breakout room with random people. Just have some questions that you could talk about. But if you're feeling like that's too much, I don't want to put that on anyone. Just verbal or hands up on the thing, on the reactions, if that sounds like a good idea. I forget they disappear, so I was looking through them, but not as many as it's not a majority or plurality. So I will skip out the breakout rooms for now, but wanted to continue this and just prep for our more official February meeting with CAC. So in that session, we're going to be talking between the organizations that support students at specific schools and at colleges, and making sure that we can connect each other to do that warm handoff with folks, because I know it's always really effective when a CAC advisor is able to tell a student, hey, this person or at Bottom Line or over at the PIC will be able to help you out with college. And then that direct connection is much more effective than just someone like from a mass email or something or coming out. So I think you all have been extremely essential to our work and supporting students. So definitely want to make sure that we do a little bit more of the formal connection in February. Today was essentially just a connection, making sure people are aware, see each other's faces, and know like, oh, I remember that person from that meeting. And it's not just the first time we see each other in February, because as everybody knows, Zoom is tough to interact, especially with feeling like you are connected with folks. Last thing before I will let the CAC advisors go, at least. You feel free to stick around if you want, anyways. But one more question about, mainly to the CAC advisors, about college apps. And I wanted to see if there are any patterns that you've been noticing with applications. Like, do you see students applying to fewer schools and to schools that are more local? instead of like all over the place. I know back in the day when I was helping students apply to colleges, you would see students apply to Miami and California and Oregon, and now I'm assuming they're more likely to stay local, but I want to see from the experts what you all are saying.
I can start. It's hard for me to know like geographically what's different just because it's my first year, but I do notice that most of my students are conveying that they want to at least stay within the state. Like I'm getting a lot of students that like their list is basically entirely state schools and a couple, local, other Boston colleges. It sounds like that's like pretty common for my school. But one thing that I've also noticed just in terms of timeline is I have like significantly fewer students, I'm guessing, than last year that wanted to apply early. Like students just weren't prepared, I think also given the late start date of BPS this year. And also then, the challenges with getting remote engagement. A lot of my students were just unprepared to apply for November 1st, let alone any December 1st deadlines. And it's going to be, I think, a challenge even getting some January 1st deadline. So I'm not sure. I'm sure other CAC advisors are seeing that too. But I think the late start, really set us back a little bit.
I don't know if this is like unique to my school. I serve at BLA, and the biggest change I've seen in terms of their actual, plans and application lists is that I have a lot of students who are really concerned that colleges are going to be even more selective and even more competitive this year, partly because of the SAT optional policies, or it's like, students who graduated last year who are waiting until this year to apply or reapply. So students are applying to even more colleges than before, which is kind of frustrating for me because I just wish that they didn't have to do that. And I'm not really even sure how to guide them with that issue because I kind of agree with them that I do think the colleges are going to have to be more selective. So yeah, that's been a bit frustrating lately.
Yeah, I also kind of echo the what Camille said about having issues reaching these earlier deadlines. That I have students who are typically the top students in their classes. They're struggling even just to keep their grades up, let alone feeling like they have the time to devote to college applications. I keep talking to my two top students who past 4 years have been the top of their classes, and they keep saying, well, okay, I'll work on my essay, but I actually have this homework assignment that I have to do, and I'm behind on this other thing, and I'm not doing well in this class. So I'll just push, they keep pushing their college stuff and later because they're trying to keep up with the classes and the things that they have right now. And it's interesting because I've also had teachers reach out to me saying like, oh, this student usually does really well, but they're not doing that well. Can you like make sure that they do better because they're not going to get into college if their grades slip this year? And it's like, well, I'm a college advisor, not a tutor. And also I don't know how to help them prioritize because the teachers are telling me have them prioritize their classwork. And I know that these deadlines are coming up for college. So it's just been a little difficult to even for them to navigate, but also for me to navigate as the advisor.
That makes sense to me. I think people have been putting in the chat. Overwhelmed is a good way to just summarize that, right? Having, like you're saying, Rhea, schoolwork and college apps, and then everything else on top of that is just exacerbating all of these things. Even if you have like a perfect home life right now, just keeping up with school and college apps during this time is gonna be tough. But most of the students that we serve in BPS and in Boston are not going to have a perfect home life and need to do something on top of that. They need to work. They need to babysit their younger siblings. They need to do something else. So definitely challenging. And I appreciate people sharing what they're doing and what demands they're also getting from other folks like teachers and people trying to tell them, hey, you need to make sure that the student is getting on top of their classwork. But like we've been saying, you can only do so much. And how can we motivate students? I think it's tough, but I think I think some folks have talked about in the past, really visualizing the future and trying to take it step by step with students of where they will be if they get XYZ done. Trying to visualize a COVID-free future or a vaccine full future, where people can be outside and back to normal, quote unquote. That is something that's been somewhat effective. I don't know if any other people here have tried that and can share a little bit about that. All right. The last thing, my rabbit is going crazy over there. He needs food probably. I'll feed him in a bit. I think that was it for the CAC advisors. I will be making sure to send out an official invite with some more, I guess, some prep work just to connect you all with the appropriate Success Boston organizational advisor that you'll be talking to in that February meeting, where I'll be having more official breakout rooms and formal connections. So that the students will be able to be handed off and supported as they head to college. And yeah, just thank you all. Thank you to CAC for joining us and talking about what struggles you're going through, what struggles your students are facing, and hopefully we can keep working together. And we're always here to help out. And I'm assuming you all are here to share tips and guidance as well. So really, really appreciate you all for joining.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely, Stephanie. All right.
You all.
See, yes. And then lastly, just for the Success Boston coaches, few things before we close out at 11. Any guidance or tips that people have been sharing with students as they prep for finals in spring? Yeah, my rabbit does have Zoom fatigue. Malcolm, you are 100%. I should pay more attention to him. I'll get him right now. What are people telling their students about finals in spring? I know people talking about a lot of folks don't want to re-enroll in spring, but then you see some other students who, maybe some older students who have been out of it for a bit. They're like, okay, this is the time to come back because it's online. I won't have to go to campus. Is that what you all are seeing mostly?
I think for students, and I'm only working with first years, but I think for students that are second guessing spring, if they're usually telling me like they don't want to do it at all, I'll try and suggest that maybe they just pick up less classes and see how they feel about that. Talk to them about taking classes and subjects that they feel more confident in, like with their performance and like their understanding of it. And that's been my strategy.
Yeah, I think
I will
everybody.
echo.
Oh, go for it.
Sorry. I'll echo Chris Melly's comments. I have currently, I want to say, first through third years. So for the upperclassmen, I've noticed a trend of like, I'm going to be 3/4 time, I'm going to be half time, just because with the 2 semesters of remote learning, they've kind of learned what their capacities are, because a lot of them have picked up a lot of hours at work, or family obligations have increased and heightened. So they'll continue, but they will be a part-time student. I have a lot of students that actually, a lot of my third years did that this fall, and they've been having a lot more success being part-time. They feel a lot more confident going into the spring semester because they've been able to kind of find their footing with remote learning. It's still hard. This is not easy. It will never be easy. But, you know, you always think about the financial implications of going part-time and how that really can affect a lot of students. But honestly, it's been a little bit more manageable than trying to cover the balance that you would have as a full-time student, which was really surprising to me. A lot of my third years that I've been working with for 2 years that have really had a hard time covering their balances have really lucked out this semester being part-time. I don't know if it's because they applied early and they got all the state aid and everything possible. I don't know what happened, but I'm really grateful for that because I was really worried about those students. First years still seem to be carrying out a full course load for spring. I just don't know if they know that they can kind of say that they don't want a full course load if they are struggling. I don't think we've worked on that aspect of self-advocacy as much, but that's okay. We will figure that out. There's time to figure that out. I think once grades kind of hit and you can have that conversation based off of the data, like, hey, you know, you took 5 classes, but you did well in 3. Would 3 be better for you? Like if we can financially do that. So that's kind of how I plan on attacking it. As far as finals, I mean, I'm really more worried about pass fail and withdraw right now. So that's been kind of tough for me, but I will say just reminding them about support services that we offer, and, you know, having more conversations with advisors during this next week and a half, because classes end on the 14th. So that's kind of my spiel and my take so far.
I agree with Malika. I'm finding a mixed potpourri of situations with my group. Again, I range from 2nd years all the way to 6th years, so I have a lot of them in current grad students. And I'm noticing that those that are closer to graduation are more motivated to do this. I think they're using the frustration and anger of the pandemic to push them through. And I'm finding those like in the middle or in the beginning to feel more resistant to continuing and hoping that it would kind of go back to normal that was mentioned earlier. So I'm finding them sort of thinking about taking a semester off. And then it all depends on their situation too, because there are certain students who now are not working. So they're feeling like they're forced to go full time just to make up the time. And then there are those that are working that are finding themselves needing to work more. So needing to go part-time in order to stabilize rent or household finances. And then there's also the situation of the 2-year versus the 4-year students and figuring out like what's their next plan. But I am finding that my 4-year students tend to be a bit more, are more able to stay on track with the work online versus my 2-year students who are struggling a bit more, but there are some bright spots that are managing through. And then lastly, I think the overall concern of finances is just a key problem across the board, no matter what situation any student's in. I think they feel pressured with the consequence of dropping a class or withdrawing too soon and how that affects them. So they're feeling like I have to find a way to get through this, but I don't know how. And we try to offer them the resources such as tutoring, either on the school's support system or through Hyde Square on our end. But I still find that I don't know how to put it in words. That mental instability, I guess, of feeling like I'm forced to do this. I don't want to do this, but I'm forced to do it. I know I have to do it. My mom is forcing me to do it. If I don't do this, then I'm kicked out of my house if I'm not a full-time student, because I have to have like rental papers to show that I'm a student in order to keep my rent at a certain level. So there's a lot of pressure these students are facing right now that it's just becoming to a point where, you know, as a coach, I'm just there letting them vent. I've had a few of my students break down on Zoom or break down over the phone, and it's just heartbreaking as a coach to take all that in, you know, and there's not much that we can do as coaches on the other side of the camera to help them out with that, other than, you know, give them that virtual hug per se. But it's real out there, and I had a young lady yesterday I checked in with who she's a culinary student at Bunker Hill who should be graduating next semester, but you know, is failing classes this semester because she couldn't go to the campus because her mom had COVID, her grandfather has COVID, her aunt has COVID, her uncle has COVID, her cousin has COVID. So she's been exposed to that, and she's not able to go on campus to complete the lab work that she's supposed to do for culinary because she doesn't want to risk anybody at Bunker Hill. And so she's dealing with all this. And I just looked at her and like, girl, you're strong. I admire what you're doing. You know, you're checking in, but I appreciate you being open and giving you this space to share that, because again, there's students who will bottle things up because they want to bottle it up. Then there are students like her who need to let it out. And as coaches, I think it's our role to make sure that we're there for them to let that out, because they're just holding in too much at this point. And for many of them, the frustration is coming to a level where it's going to affect them sooner or later in a different way than what they're going through now. So again, it runs the gambit on different types of students that I'm working with and what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and what I'm encountering. But I think our role as coaches right now is as important as it is before, because they're really dependent. Even if they don't reach back, they're really dependent on us just to be there. Even if they see the email, just to be there. So yeah, I'm seeing all that. Sorry, I had to vent that out.
Yeah, I agree with Joel. The student, it's the same on this end too. The students are, I mean, like everyone else, they're trying to survive, both physically, emotionally, socially, academically. They're trying to survive. And to even add to that, this may sound small, but I think one of the biggest thing that's really weighing heavy is the fact that they have to read a lot more. Like they have to read a lot more stuff. Small example would be if at Bunker Hill you were a student, you're going to take the Accuplacer test. It's different. You don't just walk in now. Like you have to literally read the instructions as to what to do. If you want to do the English assessment, you have to read. They have to read a lot of stuff from FAFSA. And if you like, I've been paying a lot of attention to that as I'm working with students, noticing that like the fact that they have like information, they're like loaded with the same amount of work, if not more, before the pandemic. And I think someone mentioned earlier, it's like, yeah, the expectation is still the same, but we talk mental health, mental wellness. Students are having to work more, but they still have the same workload. And they have to even read more stuff. And a lot of them are just like, they don't want to, they may be tired or have to work or something. It's like, well, I don't want to read all of this right now. I'll do it tomorrow. But it may be something that has to do with a scholarship or financial aid. But yeah, it's the load.
Yeah, I just the well, first to Joel's the venting. I think that's 100% true, and I don't think you should apologize for venting yourself. I think that's part of the self-care, making sure that folks are supported and supporting yourself too. So thank you for sharing that. And to Malcolm's point about the reading all the instructions and just having that overload of the same thing over and over, that repetitiveness is probably, yeah, it's definitely taking a toll on the students, especially when they've been so used to in-person teaching, and then it's that shift to independence is like almost all the way at the other end. Like first year, you're a lot more independent than in high school, but it's not to this level. So I think that's definitely a big challenge. This kind of leads me to the last part of our session, which is like some topics that I was thinking about covering for the January coaches meeting. Have been asking a few folks, but want to get some other suggestions if people have any, or voting on stuff, I guess. One of them was a coaches strategies discussion. So pretty much having small breakout rooms, maybe like 2 or 3 with a good mix of coaches, with like a couple of more experienced coaches, a couple newer ones, talking to each other about what strategies they've been using in the past to motivate students, to keep themselves motivated, their colleagues, how they practice self-care. So I think that's going to be one part of the meeting. But wanted to check in with you all to see if there's anything else that you think you would want to discuss for January, anything that you think would be very pertinent that I could try to do some research on and get someone to talk to us about.
So as part of that conversation, I'd love if, and I'm sure this was already going to happen, but for those breakout rooms, if we could just have a place where all of the notes from the different breakout rooms are, so we have like the, information from our personal breakout rooms and then from other coaches talking about different practices. And then I know we talked about this previously, but I think maybe it could be part of this conversation is talking about like in engaging youth and best practices for that, how coaches are handling like offering up unstructured time and making it, unstructured but structured. How to go about that. I think it could just be a natural part of that conversation, perhaps.
I was talking about this with Joelle, but strategies for re-engaging students that you haven't talked to in a long time, that have been ignoring you for a long time. Or let me not say ignoring, that haven't been responsive for a long time.
I feel that one for sure. When a student just goes to you, you're like, come on, like, I'm just trying to help. Like, what am I doing wrong? I 100% feel that. I think sometimes, I mean, we'll definitely talk about it more in January, but just like saying, oh, this opportunity came up, I think you'd be a great fit. You should look into it. And not even like making them apply, but just say, hey, this looks cool. What do you think? Sometimes it works, sometimes it keeps ghosting.
Like striking that balance between like bothering them a lot and them being like, all right, I'm gonna block your number now, and like getting actually to get them to engage.
All right. Well, one very last thing. So our dear Morgan Bondi, this is her last coaches meeting, and wanted to give her a couple of minutes to just talk and tell us a little bit about what's going on. And if you don't have to say everything, but yeah, just wanted to shout Morgan out and thank her for all of the great advice and support she's provided us and her students, the Wesson House, and yeah, just shout out.
Thanks, Juan. I had some emails coming some of your ways, so sorry if it's a shock to some of you, but life, I guess, happens, and I unexpectedly moved to Arizona, which is where I am right now. And it's just been such a privilege to work with you all and be a part of this collaborative community for so many years. This is my 7th academic year with Success Boston, and you know, when I first started, I remember my first day was actually at a monthly coaches meeting at Hyde Square. We had the big breakfast. And it was just, I didn't understand what was happening, to be honest, because I was like, I'm working for Westinghouse. Like, who are all these people that are helping us? But it's just been such a privilege to learn from and just be a part of this community. And I think, you know, I'm so proud to have been included in it and have truly like learned from this experience greatly. And it's obviously a very hard transition, and I've talked with some of you individually, and some of you have some conversations with me heading your way. But I don't know. It's a hard thing, and obviously when we are so deeply entwined with our students and what's happening in their lives and the relationships, you know, it's difficult to imagine not officially, at least, being a part of that. And I think, you know, just like trusting that the relationships that we are all building with our young people are not just, you know, our jobs, right? Like, we have built these relationships that beyond, Juan has left being a Success Boston coach and is still very much in touch with a lot of his students. You know, I'm very hopeful that my relationships will continue beyond my official Success Boston cap. And so I just want to thank you all for everything and all of the patience. And Annabelle and Joelle, when I first started, I spent a lot of time with you guys, learning from you, and definitely hit up Karen one too many times probably. So I'm just so appreciative for everyone's expertise. And yeah, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Yeah, definitely, like all the heart emojis, definitely gonna be missed. From bringing up great questions for people, especially when there were workshops or external folks. I think I always look to you for some guided and pointed questions, I thought, because that's necessary, and really, really appreciated those. And yeah, all the guidance you gave to your students and to us definitely will be missed. I know Westinghouse, Tammy is here, and she's going to be helping keep Westinghouse along with Chris and Portia. So definitely will be keeping the tradition going. And yeah, you're always welcome back, Morgan. If you ever need to check in with us or email us about anything, we're always here. And yeah, your students will definitely still bug you for things. In my experience, I still get students like, "Hey, can you look at this resume?" or "Can you be a reference for this?" Like, you know, I will absolutely. So that's not going
I'm
anywhere.
going to send out my personal email if anyone wants to contact me separately, and if there's anything I can ever do for the network, or, you know, just anything, I'm always happy to help. And even though I guess technically I'm far away, I'm not farther than a Zoom chat. So I hope to stay in touch with, you know, you all and follow the work that we've like been so embedded in for so long. And Portia is going to be holding it down for Westinghouse with Chris and Tammy. And, you know, I'm very confident that the team will sort of carry the torch, and they're very hard workers. So I'm excited to see where Westinghouse takes it.
All right. Thank you, Morgan. And with that, I think that is it for today. I hope everyone has a great rest of the month. I'll send out some notes soon with the recording and some resources that people have been putting in the chat and emailing. I know Emily and Lauren and Karen posted a bunch of resources, so definitely we'll be sharing that. And have a good holiday. If I don't talk to you till then, and we'll see you in January. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.